me behind. There's a long wide road in heaven, I know, and I don't want it to leave me behind. Good news, chariots are coming. Good news, chariots are coming. Good news, chariots are coming, and I don't want it to leave me behind. There's a starry crown in heaven, I know.
A starry crown in heaven, I know.
There's a starry crown in heaven, I know, and I don't want it to leave me behind. Good news, chariots are coming. Good news, chariots are coming. Good news, chariots are coming, and I don't want it to leave me behind. Good news, chariots are coming. Good news, chariots are coming. Good news, chariots are coming, and I don't want it to leave me behind.
Woo! Well, we'd like to invite you to share in the singing fun with us today. And for our opening song, we're going to do We Come Together. And we finally, I think, will have the words up on the screen to make it extra easy for you. So if you would like to stand, please do. And there's things we can sing to each other in this song. It makes it extra fun.
Take a look at the person next to you. Say, I recognize the God in you. Feel the love in the sanctuary. Lift your voice and repeat after me. We come together.
Yes, we do.
We come together.
Uh-huh.
We come together. In the name of love, we come together. We come together. We come together. In the name of love.
Uh-huh. We are coming together right here, right now.
Take a look at the person next to you. Say, God loves you and I love you too.
There's some real love.
Feel the love in the sanctuary. Lift your voice and repeat after me. We come together. We come together. We come together. In the name of love, we come together. We come together. We come together. In the name of love. From every walk of life. Every walk of life.
Every creed and color.
Every creed and color.
In kinship we unite.
Whoa, in honor of the God in each other.
Here we go again. Get ready.
Take a look at the person next to you. Say, Namaste, I bow to you. Feel the love in the sanctuary. Lift your voice and repeat after me. We come together. We come together. We come together. In the name of love, we come together.
I'm hearing it.
We come together. We come together.
In the name of what?
In the name of love, we come together. We come together. We come together. In the name of love, we come together. We come together. We come together. In the name of love.
Woo! You can feel it. Yeah.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Laura Berryhill and Anton Miserak. Good morning, everybody. Great to see you. I'm Kimberly Hawkins, Spiritual Director here. It's always my pleasure to welcome you to the Center for Spiritual Living Rogue Valley in partnership with Unity of Medford. We are a radically inclusive, spiritually progressive faith community dedicated to teaching tools to both transform personal lives and help make a world that works for all. We welcome each of you, no matter where you happen to be on your own personal spiritual journey. And if you're here for the first time, and I know we have lots of first-timers, would you raise your hand, please? We'd like to give you a little love. Welcome. Welcome. And let's see, Patricia, do you have welcome packets back there? If you did not receive a welcome packet and with a brochure about our center when you walked in, would you raise your hand again and one of our ushers will give you one. Keep your hand up if you would. We're so glad you could join us. If you haven't already done so, please turn your cell phones on silent mode or off. And I'm going to introduce a few folks. Let's see, our pulpit practitioner this morning is Reverend Laura Stewart, wearing her favorite team's, outfit this morning. Our practitioner, Treasure Wild, did a meditation for us this morning, and she's sitting high watch. She's praying throughout the service for the highest and best good of everybody here. And you've met our beautiful musicians, Laura Berryhill and Anton Miserak. I think that's it for now. We were expecting our teens to be back from camp, but they haven't made it down yet from Roseburg. So hopefully by the end of service, we'll be able to hear a little bit about what camp was like. We'll see. For now, I'm going to invite us all to take a collective deep breath as I turn it back to our musicians to prepare us for our invocation and reading. And after this particular song, please hold your applause so we maintain that sacred, quiet place for prayer.
Peace within you, deep peace within you. May peace be upon you. Deep peace be upon you. The peace within shines without like the sun, and it's only just begun. So breathe, just breathe. Breathe, just breathe. Without and the light within are the same, just a different name. So breathe, just breathe. must breathe.
Good morning. I'd like to applaud all of you who made the commitment to show up today on AFC NFC Championship weekend. I know how hard that is when your team's made it this far, so thank you for coming. And those of you who chose to stay at home, I totally get it. So that being said, good morning. My name is Reverend Laura Stewart. And I just invite each and every one of you right now to take a deep breath, relaxing into this perfect present moment. This moment that contains within it absolutely everything. I find it exquisite that just like love and peace, God can only be experienced in this present moment. You can't breathe in the past, you cannot breathe in the future, you can only breathe in the now. And it is in this now that God exists, that Spirit is calling, that life is expressing fully through each and every one of us. And it is good. If it wasn't for this teaching, I wouldn't know who I am. I wouldn't know my inherent divinity. More importantly, I wouldn't know yours. And it is from this knowing that I speak my word, knowing that absolutely everything about this service today is blessed beyond measure. That if you weren't here, it would actually be lacking. So thank you for your presence. I am grateful to know that our AV team, that our musicians, that our ecclesiastical team, our practitioners, but most importantly, our rogue minister are here to make this day what it is, to help stir within us that reminder if we'd forgotten of who we are. We are the place where God shows up to experience life beautifully, magnificently as each and every one of us. And I dare say, God is delighted beyond measure with who we are and how we're here to show him a good time as us. So I know today is blessed. I know it is good. And will you join me in grounding this by declaring unequivocally, and so it is. So the reading that I've chosen today is from a book called Ho'oponopono, a Hawaiian forgiveness ritual. Ho'oponopono is the Hawaiian ritual of forgiveness. It proceeds from an understanding of the unity of everything in the world, which is true even though we feel ourselves to be separate. Because of this unity or oneness, nothing can happen in our own world without creating a resonance in the observer. It follows that we can only influence problems in the external world if we heal the corresponding inner resonance. Ho'oponopono is a simple way of arriving at unity, inner peace, and returning to harmony. Ho'oponopono implies solving a problem from the ground up and apply the solution to useful ends. It expresses the deep need to live once again in harmony with oneself and with humanity, nature, and God. Ho'o means to make, and pono is translated as right or correct. It follows that ponopono would be rightly right, and so ho'oponopono quite simply represents to make rightly right. This means to join oneself again with one's higher self and the source of all being, to be in one's own center, return to harmony, and balanced once again so that one is able to realign the environment and reshape reality. To make rightly right means an undertaking after veering off course, to bring oneself back into the right road, becoming sound in body and spirit, and achieving happiness and well-being. To accomplish this, the ritual of Ho'oponopono relies on 4 transformative sentences. I am sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. This method is of Hawaiian origin and is based on the understanding that we live in a universe of abundance and that God, the original source, wants us to enjoy this abundance and perfection. Forgiveness releases us, as Treasure so beautifully communicated during this morning's meditation. It frees us from a burden that either we cannot carry or do not want to carry. Ultimately, forgiveness heals and makes life easier. It is a gift that we give to ourselves. May you give your gift to yourself and to everyone around you that is in need of that peace and harmony in their lives. Thank you.
Every little thought, every little deed, every little want, every little need, an expression of love, an impression of love, a procession of love, or a call for love, a reflection of love, a perception of love, a connection to love, or a cry for love. Once I finally realized how much this life was worth, I began to make amends to all that I had heard, an expression of love. Impression of love. A procession of love. A call for love. Once I finally realized how much this life was worth, I began to make amends to all that I had heard, an expression of love, an impression of love, procession of love, a call for love, a reflection of love, a perception of love, a connection to love, a cry for love. It's a blessing of love.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you both so much. Woohoo!
I wrote that one for you, Kim.
Thank you, Anton. right out of the Course in Miracles, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're so blessed to have these two.
Oh. That's
All right. This is interesting.
there is a plan B.
Okay. All right, turn it off. We're gonna use this. We're gonna use this one. All right. Sorry, y'all.
Let's get this in the
We're gonna forgive the mic. So while we're taking care of mic problems, I'd like to welcome a colleague of mine here, Pastor Murray, who just retired from the Presbyterian Church down the street, and his partner Gina. Welcome. So glad to see you here. Yeah. All right, I guess I'm tethered here. Oh well, you know me, I like to walk around. Could you hold that? I could actually. Let me try that. Yeah, okay. Okay. Well, that was an interesting beginning. I've chosen for the topic for this month, January, Beyond the Basics. We traditionally, in our New Thought churches, both Unity and Science of Mind, went back to the basics in January and talked about God and prayer and all that good stuff. But at this point in our evolution, I think we're called to go beyond. So my talk title this morning is The Miracle of Forgiveness. And I want to go beyond the basics when we talk about forgiveness, because I think most of us here already know the basics about forgiveness. We know that we don't forgive for the other person. We forgive to relieve the burden of resentment and anger and all of that stuff ourselves. Most of us know that forgiveness is not saying that the person that we have a problem with, that their behavior was acceptable or okay. We're not condoning the behavior. We're just letting go of our resentment. Most of us know by this time that forgiveness isn't a one and done deal. You know, sometimes it's a process and a path through life, really. I think it was MLK that said something like, you know, it's not just a one-time thing, it is an attitude that we carry through life. So we know all that. So I want to take us a little deeper, because I think in these times we're in this country with all the divisiveness and all that's going on, we truly, truly need to practice forgiveness. No matter what side of the aisle we're on, no matter who we voted for, all that stuff. We teach in Science of Mind and Unity that we are one, that we're all individual, precious expressions of the one life that is God, that is Spirit. And yet we can act completely like we are separate, yes? I love the expression you've probably heard that holding on to resentment is like swallowing a bottle of poison and expecting the other person to die. Doesn't work like that. Yeah. So let's talk about this constant attitude that MLK talked about. In Matthew 18:22, you remember Peter asked Jesus, "How many times do I need to forgive somebody, Lord, who sinned against me? 7 times?" And Jesus said, "Oh no, 70 times 7, which I think basically meant it's not a one and done, kiddo. You got to keep doing it, right? Yeah, not always an easy thing to do. So I've entitled the talk today, The Miracle of Forgiveness. Now, why a miracle? The Course in Miracles defines a miracle as a change in perception. So I'm going to give you 3 perhaps new definitions of forgiveness. Unless you're a Course in Miracles student, you may not have heard these. And I think they're pretty deep. And this is not a practice for the faint of heart, the spiritually faint of heart. This is a deep, not always easy practice. But I think it's the only practice that can really bring us true peace and true happiness. So forgiveness is changing our perception from fear to love. The ego in our fear-based thinking looks at everything and thinks, I'm not safe, somebody's the villain, there's lack, I got to compete, on and on and on. And if we look from the eyes of love, we see that we're all in this together, we're all one, that God is infinitely abundant and loving, and that we're each individual expressions of that one life. So forgiveness is the healing, this is definition number 1, of the perception of separation. And I bet everybody sitting here, including me standing up here, has had some feelings of separation lately. Anybody relate to that? Separate from other folks who don't think the same? I'm going to invite us to forgive everything and everyone. I mean that. I'm not there yet. I'm working on it. But I have a deep commitment to do it, and a deep commitment that that's the only way I'm going to experience peace, and that we're going to create a world that is experiencing peace, not to mention a country. I think this is the practice for experiencing peace, for experiencing enlightenment, to awaken to the truth of who we are. So, we have this trinity that we tend to worship. There's a villain and a victim and a hero, a rescuer. I don't have the exact word there, but I think that's nonsense. That's nonsense. We can sin, we can miss the mark for sure. We can do hurtful things to each other, and we can feel like we've had people betray and hurt us. There's no question about that in our human form. But there's no such thing as a villain in God's view. Remember when Jesus was on the cross, he said, "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do." We're going to talk more about that, what that understanding can do for us. So definition number 1 was forgiveness is the healing of the perception of separation. Definition number 2 is forgiveness is remembering who you are. Remembering who you are. Again, if you are indeed a whole, perfect, eternal incarnation of the one life. We believe if God is all there is, we're made of that cloth. We're made of God's stuff. We're brothers and sisters in God. So remembering who we are, if we are eternal, sure, our bodies can be hurt, our emotions can be hurt, we can have crazy, mixed up, hurtful thoughts. All of that is true. But nothing can really destroy the essence of who we are, that spiritual nature of who we are, just as Jesus showed us when he was resurrected. We are eternal. So remembering who we are, we can not drag the past into the future and present with us. We can let it go. We can release it. Now, the other thing I forgot to mention that we already know about forgiveness is forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean you stay in close connection and relationship with the person you need to forgive. Sometimes it's toxic and we need to bless them and forgive them and let them be separate, right? That's not saying we have to be a doormat. So remembering who we are. And the last one is forgiveness is understanding. Wow. And I mentioned, Jesus saying that, "Father, forgive them, they know not what they do." He understood why they could possibly do the unthinkable. Crucify him, right? The Course in Miracles tells us this: you have no idea of the tremendous release and deep peace that comes from meeting yourself and your brothers totally without judgment. The strain of constant judgment is virtually intolerable. It is curious that an ability so debilitating would be so deeply cherished. Those are powerful words, my friends. So if forgiveness is understanding, I had an experience of this myself, and you may have heard this story before if you've come before. I had an experience of understanding this definition of forgiveness. I've shared before that my father sexually abused all 3 of us, brutally, to the point where none of us had any memories of it. We had repressed it all until we were in our 30s and had years of therapy to heal it. And I'm not saying we don't need therapy in addition to forgiveness, because most of us probably do. And I got through my anger, and I got through all the feelings I had to work through. And then I got to the point where I started to be able to look at him and try to understand him, how he, someone who loved us, could be so brutally whatever, you know? And what I remembered about him, he was still living at the time, was that my dad, his father abandoned the family when the stock market crashed in 1929. They were wealthy, and he lost his fortune, and Dad took off never to be seen again. His mom then turned him, my father and his brother, over to an uncle and her sister to raise. So he was abandoned by Dad, abandoned by Mom. His uncle sexually abused him, I learned later. His brother Bill, his younger brother Bill, was killed during World War II. He was shot down. He was a pilot. All of this loss, and yet my dad came from a generation that was even more, where men were even more not allowed to grieve, not allowed to cry, no such thing as understanding PTSD, none of that, right? And so he became a very highly functioning alcoholic, and he was a sex addict. And once I realized, once I could feel in my own heart how badly he had been hurt, I had compassion for him. That doesn't make what he did right. Doesn't make it right, right? Many people who were sexually abused don't go on to abuse others. It's not right. But through that understanding came compassion and came a complete forgiveness for me. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's a process. It took some time. I'm going to, now I guess one more thing I want to say, and then we have a poet laureate in our midst, and I'm going to invite him up. Jason, if you want to make your way up here, that would be wonderful. This doesn't mean, this forgiveness thing, it doesn't mean we don't speak truth to power. Some of you heard Bishop Wood, if I'm pronouncing her name right, an Episcopal minister that spoke about compassion and our need to keep that in mind in our government and so on. It was beautiful. So it doesn't mean that we don't speak up or, I don't know, just do the right thing or confront people when we think they're not. It doesn't mean that. It just means that we let go of all our anger and our resentment. Jason, would you come on up? Jason wrote a poem. We have this Poetry as Spiritual Practice group. And I learned about this guy here, that he is a poet, and I'd like you to share your poem about forgiveness. I'm going to give you this.
Thank you. If I may just give a little background. Forgiveness for me has always been kind of difficult because there's so much to forgive, especially from my parents. And I was abused, but not sexually, but physically abused. So I found out later in life that there was a lot of extenuating circumstances and that there was reasons and et cetera, but still, you could never forgive. About 5 years ago, I started examining those feelings again and finally decided to put pen to paper and see if I could come up with some relief or something. Because a lot of anger, a lot of stuff from the war, et cetera. I found that it was, once I got into it, it wasn't that difficult to start forgiving my parents and uncles and various people that abused me and treated me differently as a child. What I found that it was very much more difficult for me to forgive myself for some of the things I'd done growing up in the service to my family. And it's an ongoing thing. You just never get to the point where you're totally forgiven, but you're working on it. I'm working on it. So I'd like to read this poem to you now, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. The poem's titled, To Forgive. Forgiveness blooms quietly in the heart, rising softly after the longest night. It comes not in thunder or flame, but as a whisper of release, like a bird freed from its cage of sorrow. It is not forgetting, but letting go, gently untying the knots binding the soul to anger. Forgiveness is the hand unclenching, the breath softening, a wave cleansing the shore once more. In forgiving, we too are forgiven, not by those who have hurt us, but by the light within us. To forgive is to see with clear eyes, to understand the wounds we all carry, and to know that in shared imperfection, we are all deserving of mercy. It's a soul's healing, a quiet miracle that turns pain to peace, allowing love to rise once more like the sun, whole, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason, and thank you for being willing to share that. Jason, by the way, is a Vietnam War vet, correct? Jason? Vietnam veteran, yeah. So for the second part of this message, I came across a story this week that I'd like to tell you. We have a slide of a Palestinian man. His name is Bassam Aramin. And I'd like to read you a letter that he wrote. He, as a young boy, lived in Israeli-occupied territory in Palestine, and it was rough. So bear with me while I read you this letter from Bassam, and this is a story of amazing forgiveness and amazing good that has come out of the ability to forgive. As a child, I fought the occupation by raising the Palestinian flag in our playground. We never felt safe. We were always running from jeeps to avoid soldiers beating us. Our homes were invaded, children killed. At the age of 12, I joined a demonstration where a boy was shot by a soldier. I watched him die in front of me. From that moment, I developed a deep need for revenge. I became part of a group whose mission was to get rid of the catastrophe that had come to our town. We called ourselves freedom fighters, but the outside world called us terrorists. At first, we just threw stones and empty bottles. But when we came across some discarded hand grenades in a cave, we decided to hurl them at the Israeli jeeps. 2 of them exploded. No one was injured, but we were caught. And in 1985, at the age of 17, I received a 7-year prison sentence. Our jailers taught us how to continue hating and resisting. On the 1st of October, 1987, 120 of us, all teenage boys, were waiting to go into the dining room when the alarms suddenly went off. Over 100 armed soldiers then suddenly appeared and ordered us to strip naked. They beat us until we could hardly stand. I was held the longest and beaten the hardest. What struck me was that all the soldiers wore smiles on their faces. They were beating us without hatred because for them this was just a training exercise and they saw us as objects. As I was beaten, I remembered a movie I'd seen the year before about the Holocaust. At the time, I'd been happy that Hitler had killed 6 million Jews. I remember wishing that he'd killed them all because then I would never have to be sent to prison. But some minutes into the movie, I found myself crying and feeling angry that the Jews were being herded into gas chambers without fighting back. If they knew they were going to die, why didn't they scream out? I tried to hide my tears from the other prisoners who wouldn't have understood why I was crying about the pain of my oppressors. It was the first time I felt empathy. The incident with the soldiers made me realize that we had to preserve our humanity, our right to laugh, and our right to cry in order to save ourselves. I also slowly realized that the Israeli oppression was because of the Holocaust, and I decided to try to understand who the Jews were. This led to a conversation with a prison guard. It was the start of a dialogue and a friendship. We discovered many similarities, and some months later, the guard said he understood now that we were not the settlers. He even became a supporter of the Palestinian struggle. Seeing how this transformation happened through dialogue and without force made me realize that the only way to peace was through non-violence. Our dialogue enabled us both to see each other's purity of heart and good intent. In 2005, some of us who believed in nonviolence started meeting, this is after his release from prison, started meeting in secret with former Israeli soldiers. We were meeting as true enemies who wanted to speak. The Israelis were refusing to fight, not for the sake of the Palestinian people, but for the sake of the morals of their society. We too were not acting to save Israeli lives, but to prevent our society from suffering more. It was only later that we both came to feel a responsibility for each other's people. In 2007, we have another slide here. Beer is the girl on the left. His daughter was killed. In 2010, my 10-year-old daughter, Abir, was shot and killed in cold blood by a member of the Israeli border police while standing outside her school with some classmates. There were no demonstrations or violence or anything like that. I've been appalled by the details of what happened, not least that she had just bought a candy at the store and hadn't had time to eat it. Now, I want to point out that the second girl on the right is the daughter of an Israeli who was also killed. I'll tell you that story in a minute. I believe in justice, and many hundreds of my Israeli brothers and Jewish brothers around the world support me. I want to bring this man to justice because he killed my 10-year-old daughter, not because he's an Israeli and I'm a Palestinian, but because my child was not a fighter, nor was she a Fatah or Hamas member. Abir's murder could have led me down the easy path of hatred and vengeance, but for me there was no return from dialogue and nonviolence. After all, it was one Israeli soldier who shot my daughter, but 100 former soldiers who built a garden in her name at the school where she was murdered. That, my friends, is how understanding can lead to forgiveness. And I believe it's the only way, forgiveness and understanding is the only way we're going to achieve not only peace in our own hearts, peace in our country, but peace in our world. Now, there's a little more to this story, if you'll bear with me. These two men, first of all, the very day that Bassam's daughter died, he joined an organization called Combatants for Peace. He became close friends with this Israeli man named Rami Elhanan. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Rami had lost his 14-year-old daughter Smadar in a suicide bombing attack in the 1990s. So you can imagine how these two bonded. They became close friends, and they've traveled the world to spread their mission of dialogue over violence. They've spent decades preaching bridge building over division. Wow. I think that we can't will forgiveness necessarily. There were steps that he mentioned in there till where they finally understood one another. But we can be willing to forgive. And sometimes it takes just being willing to be willing to forgive. As the Course in Miracles tells us, and as these two so beautifully sang, everything anyone says or does is either an expression of love or a cry for love and healing. If we can begin to see our, quote, enemies, whether they be whatever kind of enemies, political, familial, anybody, if we can begin to see our so-called enemies as simply crying for love, crying for healing, that is a miracle. That is a change in perception that can heal the world. So I invite us now, each of us, and I include me in this, to be willing to be willing to forgive everyone and everything, and I mean everyone and everything. Let's go into prayer. We recognize there is one power, one presence, one source, one creator. It goes by many, many names: God, Spirit, the All, the Alpha, the Omega, infinite love, intelligence. We could go on and on. I know this God, this creator, this source of each of us as the peace that passeth understanding, as unconditional love, as infinite abundance and givingness, freedom, harmony, so much more. I know that God is everywhere present, all-knowing. It indeed, she, he, it knows the hairs on our head. It is closer than our breath, nearer than our hands and feet, always. And it is omnipotent. Through God, when we allow Spirit's love to move through us, all things are possible. The Course in Miracles tells us the holiest place of all on earth is where an ancient hatred has become a present love. May we invite our ancient hatreds to become love. May we ask that we be transformed so that we might have the miracle of seeing with the Christ vision, with the eyes of love rather than the eyes of fear, of hate. May we each be supported in this practice as individuals, as a country, and as a world. I know that God supports us in that. That as we ask for guidance, it is given. As we ask that our hearts be cleansed from the burden of revenge thoughts, of anger, of resentment, even of hurt and betrayal, we can become new. We can rise up. We can look with that vision of the Christ mind. It is possible, my friends. It is not necessarily easy, but I pray that we are supported and willing. We are willing to be willing to forgive. I give thanks for this teaching. I give thanks for people like these two brave men who have made such a difference, and there are many more like them, and we can join them. And so I release this prayer with great, great thanks, knowing it is heard and it is answered, and I invite us to say together, and so it is. Amen.
Well, to stay in that beautiful spirit, wow. I mean, what? Those concepts are amazing. We're going to invite you to sing along with the song. You don't need to stand. We're going to put the words up just to kind of seal in that place of forgiveness and freedom. What, they don't want to stand? People can stand or not. I mean, if you want to. I told them they did.
I think they should sit for this.
Yeah, just sit with it like a musical meditation. We'll get more exercise later.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. And may I be happy.
Now we'll wish this for all the others that aren't really separate from us in the room and in the world.
May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. And may you be happy.
And it's always better together when we can think of us as one, oneness, unity.
May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. And may we be happy.
And finally, bring that home so it's just centered within you.
I am filled with loving kindness. I am well. I am peaceful and at ease. And I am happy. And I am happy. And I am happy.
It was better sitting for that.
Kind of an active musical meditation. Participatory.
Beautiful Buddhist meditation. Time, oops, I forgot I don't have a mic on. Thank you. Time now for our tithes and offerings. I'm going to invite our ushers to come forward. There are envelopes behind the purple chairs if you need one. And I just want to say a big thank you to all who continue to support this faith community so beautifully. We are very grateful. And if you would say your giving affirmation with me, ready? Graciously I give from a place of love, knowing that I give, so do I richly receive. Thank you. Patricia.
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God.
That was yummy. So we have a few announcements. Let's see. I guess our teens are not going to make it. They'll be here next week, I hope, to tell you about camp. Today, after service, as many of you know, is our annual meeting. So we'll meet for fellowship and food in Bosworth Hall, and then come back here as close to 12 as we can. It'll probably be more like 12:15. And I promise we won't go longer than an hour and a half. But it's a time to look at a slideshow that Shannon, one of our board members, has prepared, looking back at the year behind. We'll have a financial report, a report on all our activities, and to look ahead, as well as a chance for Q&A if you have some questions. So everybody's invited, whether or not you're a formal member. Please feel free to join us for that. And by the way, everyone is also invited for Michael's soups and some fellowship time next door. Today is the last day to order tamales to support Northwest Seasonal Workers Association. They come in chicken, pork, cheese, or vegan. They're $10 for a half dozen, $20 for a dozen. We are longtime partners with this organization. You can sign up in Bosworth Hall today, and delivery will be on Saturday afternoon, the 8th of February. Our ladies' soak at Jackson Wellsprings happens tomorrow evening. Women are meeting at Best Buy at 5:30 to carpool. And Ellen Michaels, would you raise your hand, please? See Ellen or Anita Streetman. Are you here too, Anita? Yeah, if you want to sign up. As usual, our poetry as spiritual practice and Tai Chi are meeting Tuesday at 10 and 11:30, respectively. Thursday, the 30th, the Travel Club is planning a lunch and an 11 a.m. tour of Harry and David. I have one spot that just opened up on my trip to Egypt next November. If you are interested, let me know. I'd be glad to send you some information, okay? I think that is it. If you want to get our weekly e-newsletter, there's a couple sign-up pages in Bosworth Hall, one for the weekly e-newsletter, one for, I know we had a lot of newcomers today. If you want a name badge, sign up. And that's helpful if everybody wears name badges. Then we don't have to be embarrassed when we've introduced ourselves and we can't remember names. We can get to know each other. So I think that's it. Am I forgetting anything? Okay, good. For once I'm not. All right, so I'm going to invite our practitioners and ministers to come forward. Please know that they are available for prayer after service. We call it a 5-minute miracle. It's their pleasure to know the truth and pray for you. There's also a prayer request box in the back, so if you'd like to submit a written prayer request, you can certainly do that. Before we turn it back to the musicians for our closing song, I'd like to read you 2 things as our benediction today. This from Marianne Williamson. The practice of forgiveness is our most important contribution to the healing of the world. And this from the Course in Miracles. Those who offer peace to everyone have found a home in heaven the world cannot destroy. Peace be with you, my friends.
Please stand for our closing song, which will be the Peace Song. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as creator, family all are we. Let us walk with each other